My classroom is small and cramped. It seems to be impossible. You know, if you're a teacher, that probably hits close to home, right? That feeling of being totally boxed in by your own four walls.
And it's so much more than just not having enough elbow room, isn't it? It feels like your creativity, your best laid lesson plans, and even your students' ability to connect with each other, they're all trapped right there with you.
But what if that didn't have to be the end of the story? What if we could actually turn that cramped classroom from a kind of prison into a playground for learning? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
Okay, so first things first, let's just get this out in the open. This is a real problem. We're not talking about a minor inconvenience here. Thousands of teachers all over the world are dealing with the exact same thing, feeling like their hands are tied by the very layout of their school.
And you know this, it affects everything. It's not just about, oh, we can't do this one fun activity. No, a cramped space means students pretty much only ever talk to the person sitting right next to them. It can make things like pair work or group projects or really any kind of dynamic interaction feel, well, just about impossible. So, where do we go from here? Well, this brings us to a really interesting, kind of mind bending idea. We might need to completely shift our perspective on what the real problem is. Just think about this for a second. What if the four walls of your classroom aren't the biggest thing holding you back? The source material we're looking at today points to something that's actually a lot more personal. And here's the good part, a lot more within our control. And this is where it gets really fascinating. We've got two kinds of constraints, right? On one hand, you have the stuff you can see, the external things, like the small room and those clunky desks. But then you have the internal constraints, things like a teacher's own confidence, worries about the class getting chaotic, or just, the inertia of this is how we've always done it. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. This source material talks about seeing teachers in these huge, spacious rooms who still feel totally cramped, and then seeing other teachers in tiny little rooms who are running these incredibly dynamic, active lessons. So what's the difference? It's not the square footage, it's the mindset. Okay, so if we're on board with this idea that mindset is a huge part of the puzzle, where do we even begin? Well, let's start small. We're talking low-effort tweaks that can have a surprisingly big payoff when it comes to your classroom's energy. So first up, minimum movement variations. The goal here isn't to start hauling furniture around. Nope. It's to rearrange the interactions. So instead of the usual side-to-side pairs, why not try pairing students with the person in front of or behind them, or have them sit on their desks for a quick pair work activity? Even just nominating a few students to swap places can totally shake up the social dynamic, and it takes, 10 seconds? All right, so once you've got a feel for those small tweaks, maybe you're ready for some bolder moves. These next few ideas are about actually, but temporarily, reshaping your classroom to see what happens. First technique, use the front of the class. I mean, think about it. No matter how jam-packed your room is, there's almost always a little bit of open space up front by the board, right? So use it. Get a few pairs or a small group to come up and do a task while standing. Honestly, students usually love any excuse to get out of their seats and stretch their legs. Okay, now for a slightly bigger step, actually moving the desks. I know, that can sound like a huge hassle, but here's the secret. Get your students to help. It can literally be a 1-minute job. And when you push all those desks to the sides of the room, you're not just getting open floor space, you're creating a totally new environment. It's a huge signal to the students that, hey, for this activity, the normal rules are out the window. All right, are you ready for the really drastic option? This is the most transformative idea we're going to talk about. It's big, maybe a little scary, but the results, well, they can be pretty incredible. What if you got rid of the desks entirely? Let me tell you a story from a teacher who is right at their breaking point. This quote here, this is the before picture. A room so jam-packed, they felt like they couldn't do anything they wanted to do. They were all, as they put it, squashed in like sardines. The students were stuck, the teacher was stuck. It was a dead end. And then this is the after. The teacher got permission to just move the desks out of the room. And what happened? In their own words, it was a bit of a miracle. Suddenly, there was space, and all these new options completely transformed their lessons. That feeling of being squashed like sardines? Gone, replaced by a feeling of total possibility. So what did this miracle actually look like in practice? Well, the results were amazing. Students could move into groups so much more easily. The whole class could meet in a circle for discussions, and naturally, there was way more speaking and a lot less quiet written work. But here's the kicker, the most important part: the students' English actually improved faster. See, this wasn't just about redecorating, it was a total game changer for their learning. So we've gone through this whole journey, from tiny little tweaks to a complete classroom overhaul. And now the question really comes back to you and your classroom. What move are you going to make? It's your space and it's your choice. The big takeaway from all this is that you have more power than you think. You are not just a victim of your classroom's four walls. Whether you start small, just by asking students to turn around and talk to someone new, or you go big and try a day without desks, you have the power to reshape your space. And that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to think about. When you say it's impossible to change the arrangement in your room, is that really truly because of the room itself? Or is it maybe, just maybe, because you're worried about losing control, worried about the noise, the chaos? Answering that question honestly for yourself might just be the key that unlocks a completely new way of teaching.